Who needs a controller for playing games when you can use skills from your library gains? If you read a thesaurus or dictionary in the past, you'll find tactile gameplay an utter blast. Clack on your keyboard and click on your wit. It's poetry's turn to get 32-bit. Epistory, Typing Chronicles, is a 2016 title from a developer called Fishing Cactus. I don't know the full story with this game, or with the developer, and I'm not going to get too deep into research about the game or them either. Why? Well, you see, Epistory is the first video in a new series I'm doing called Free Gamz. No, it's not a bunch of roaming, dismembered yet shapely legs. It's pretty straightforward. Free Gamz are games that I got for free. Usually, but not always, off of Epic Mega Games, who give games away for free all of the time. Some giant marketing routine, I think. But I also get a game for free off of Steam or GOG in a giveaway sometimes, or maybe gifted to me for one reason or another, or perhaps it's a free-to-play game in the first place, or it could even have come bundled with a graphics card or other piece of hardware. There is a lot of ways to get free games out there. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can get the game for free. It also doesn't mean that you can't get it for free, as often the kind of games that I got this way are the kind of titles that are given away for free often, or at least heavily discounted often. At this very early stage of my YouTube career, there is no causal link between any promotion relating to a game and me making a video about it. Games that are given away for free are also often core modules that need a lot of pricey DLC or similar to get the full experience. So those kinds you probably can get for free yourself easily. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely I am ever going to be doing a video on a game that's currently free on Epic or elsewhere, as by the time I've played enough of any given game to even start making a video on it, it will have long ago been rotated out of any giveaway or free store page. I know there's plenty of people out there who snap up all of the free games they can just on principle. So there's also every chance you might have a title I do a video on already sitting in your back catalogue, waiting for you to blow the dust and cobwebs off and just give a go. So to repeat, the only quality a title needs to be in the free games category is that I got it for free. Why does that matter? Why make a confusing category like that? Because a game that has come into my possession for free is not usually a game I have much of a vested interest in. It's something someone else is putting across my path for some reason of their own, probably marketing. I'm free to pick it up, give it a go, and make a video on it, without any idea about where I stand and what I think about it first. I haven't spent my own precious dollars or been wowed by the trailers or the legacy of the series it belongs to. I haven't put a pre-order on it, or paid for early access, nor is it a game that I've played before. Free Gamz videos are videos that are not going to be researched a lot. I mean, I'll look up basic facts on Wikipedia or whatever, but I want Free Gamz videos to purely be about just the impression I get from picking one from the pile that is my Epic Games library and just seeing how she goes. I feel there are a lot of gamers out there like me who have a huge library of untouched titles they got for free and they don't really care very much about, probably never even installed, and they are probably never going to be installed and played. A small selection of those games are going to end up in these videos, and of course I'm going to apply my own judgment and selection when doing this. I'm not going to just pick them at random. Stuff that looks cool and interests me is more likely to get played than stuff that doesn't. That doesn't mean I'm going to be right all the time. A Free Gamz video might very well turn out to be a game I don't like and won't recommend. It also might turn out to be a video on a hidden gem I've never heard of. That's the joy of a project like this. Just pick up a free game I don't know much about, play it, make a video, tell the people what I thought. Hopefully these should in general be shorter and lighter than my regular videos, which are more about games I'm very familiar with and have already formulated big ideas around. And ultimately I hope Free Gamz as a series will mesh well as an ongoing project for me to juggle and get my content pipeline moving with shorter, easier to make stuff between big videos. Which brings us back to Epistory, Typing Chronicles. This one caught my eye because typing games are not very common, and anything that reminds me of Typing of the Dead gets my attention pretty quickly. It is a lightweight game. I would guess developed by a small team for a modest budget, at least by AAA game standards. It's a competent job, and from my end, it ran like a tight ship. Very few obvious bugs and glitches, no performance issues, great package with a slick presentation, there's good music and an effective and novel interface. It is appropriate, you can type the words into it in order to navigate it. You can use a mouse too, of course. It runs happily in a window and has a tiny footprint on anything approaching a modern gaming system. Would work very well on any modern laptop. A big bonus for a typing game where the keyboard might seem an enticing source of entertainment when away from the GPU power of your RGB compute box. It's set in a world made out of origami paper, where you play as a girl riding on an origami fox. A female narrator reads bits of poetry that turn up on the pages of the landscape, and the poetry provides glimpses at internal monologue, world building, and dramatically withheld knowledge. It also references the in-game surroundings and situations. You can't decide if the narrator is your playable character, little girl riding the fox, or is the narrator watching the girl riding the fox and somehow outside of the game world, with knowledge only someone from the outside could have, sort of like yourself, the player. Typing being the central gameplay mechanic means that this isn't just a game. It's got practical utility in mind, like all typing games. A way to train typing skills, but make it more interesting than just words flashing up on a screen. The thing is, if you had it out for this game and you wanted to talk shit about it, you could absolutely describe it as just words flashing on a screen. It is the, in a nutshell, description of the central gameplay loop if you strip everything else away. Now, if you weren't feeling mean and you had a pretty good time with the gameplay like me, then you might talk about how there's variety in the speed the new words are delivered, and the patterns in which they come, and the complexity of the words, and there are parameters around when you can type some words and not others. There's even tactics. Overall, I am happy to report that they really do a good job with the central typing mechanic. If you in any way enjoy typing, I would say this game is a must play. There's great rhythm and focus to be had here, and while I don't think this is the holy grail of typing games by any measure, it is a pretty good one, with some surprisingly vocabulary expanding words present. I did find sometimes the words wouldn't come fast enough, and you would be waiting impatiently for them, and I also experienced a bit of a glitch here and there where some single letter entities got confused with environmental ones, obscured from my perspective, and then it locks me out of typing. Fortunately, that only happened at one part of the game, and I beat it after a few tries. Otherwise, I didn't notice any other time the game had a bug or hiccup. Typing isn't the only gameplay here. Don't get me wrong, it's 95% of the gameplay, but there is some small smattering of exploration, puzzle solving, skill tree unlocks, and collecting. You have two primary modes. You have a wandering around mode, which is on a diamond-shaped isometric angle so that WASD correspond to diagonal directions, and you have to hold two keys in order to go straight. There's also like an alternative set of keys to WASD with ideal typing hands placement. You're given them at the start of the game, but I tried it for 5 minutes and then went back to WASD, so I forgot what they were. Then there's the other mode, which you activate by hitting spacebar. It freezes your character in place and disables WASD, but lets you type words. Both entities in the environment and mobs in this game have words on them, and typing them interacts with them. Type the word on a chest and it opens. Type the word on an evil bug and it dies. That's it in terms of how you interact. You wander around and you type words on stuff. There's a little timer that encourages speed as it lets you run up combos and rack up score bonuses to be spent on your quite small skill tree. The typing is further shook up by an elemental fire, wind, ice, lightning shtick. You unlock powers from the relevant themed dungeon that you can then switch between in your spacebar typing mode. Some mobs and environmental entities can only be interacted with by the appropriate element type. which are then used for puzzles and to make the combat a little harder, as well as locking out parts of the map and collectible goodies until you have unlocked various elements. Pretty typical game stuff. The enemy mobs in this game all take the forms of various bugs and other creepy crawlies. Some of them are fast little mosquito things that only have one letter. Others are slow crawling beetles that have 4 letters. A hard one might be a serpent with 15 letters. Each mob will usually have more than one word, but you must type them in the order they are presented. Sometimes a mob will require you to use a specific element on it, indicated by the colour of its word. For example, this might mean you have to type alligator and then fire, because the next word, snooker table, is coloured red. And then there's a blue word, so you have to type ice before you type jump, and so on. These elemental powers also have tactical consequences. Ice freezing approaching enemies in place, lightning damaging more than one enemy at once, fire burns away the next word coming on a particular mob, wind pushes them further away from you. By far the funnest part of this game are when you find a nest. Rather than you hitting spacebar, when you find a nest, the danger music kicks in and you get locked into place and go into typing mode, whether you want to or not. Then all the mobs start pouring in and you find yourself hammering out words at breakneck speeds to keep up with it. I swear sometimes this can even put you in a flow state as good as something like Hades can, and if you've got a nice mechanical keyboard, you'll love the feeling. Sometimes it feels like this game doesn't quite keep up with this, or push you quite hard enough, but I think it did improve my typing and make me faster and more accurate. So, mission accomplished, devs. I do think this game works, so that's pretty cool. How many games can you say actually had a measurable impact on improving a practical everyday skill? I mean, sure they do exist, but it's still an achievement I think Fishing Cactus can be very proud of. So, all around, I've only got positive stuff to say about this game, in terms of what it is and what it has set out to achieve. However, if you wanted to frame it in terms of something like Typing of the Dead, and what exactly a holy grail typing game would look like, and believe me, I'm very satisfied if your answer is Typing of the Dead, well, this game doesn't quite hold up so well. One thing about it is the very firm creative choice to be dramatic in tone, as opposed to something like Typing of the Dead. I think typing games, due to their gameplay that depends on a variety of words being thrown at you in rapid succession, have a natural fit with a comedic tone, or at least not a serious dramatic tone. This is simply because for the typing game to be successful, typing games that hone your skills has to present you with essentially a stream of gibberish. And this game hasn't tried to marry the words you type for the typing game part of the game into the dramatic story poetry stuff. There is a firm line between them for what is first and foremost practical game design coding reasons. The words for the gameplay need to respond to gameplay tweaks like difficulty, and not come up with the same words or same type of words too many times and hit you in a sequence and rhythm that's nothing like coherent storytelling or language. It just isn't optimal for a skill-based typing game. I'm not saying it can't be done. If it were done well, I think I might cherish that game, but the concept does seem like you just end up typing out a book that's already been typed out originally by someone else, kind of like picking up Dickens off your shelf, putting it on a stand, and then touch typing it word for word into Notepad while you put on a countdown timer and some distressing music. So, naturally, a typing game that opts to tell a story doesn't use the typing to tell the story, as unless done really well, would really kill the fun of the whole thing. So, if you have this separation between gameplay and the story, if the whole thing is a bit silly, it's very easy to make it coherent, because the whole thing is incoherent anyway. Think of the main characters in the Dreamcast version of Typing of the Dead. They're running around with Dreamcasts on their back and keyboards on shoulder straps sticking out the front, and that's how they shoot the zombies. It's very silly, And with that as your premise, the word salad necessary for playing is just the natural fit. Epistory, on the other hand, is something one of my old creative writing teachers would love. No offense to them, but it's got that affected dramatic tone about it. Like, this is sincere, serious art that someone really means. Someone with not much to say about anything. My old teachers wouldn't think it's high art or anything. They'd see it for what it is, but they'd get it. And they'd like it, and I think in a lot of ways, this is even a strength for this game, as it is very accessible to a lot of people who wouldn't normally play video games, and would dismiss something like Typing of the Dead for being a stupid video game, which it is. For me, it's a weakness. I think something like this should be more like a stupid video game, because that's what a typing game is, more than a serious dramatic exploration. It honestly had me rolling my eyes and going, oh, I know where this is going in the first few minutes. I've been here before. This feels like an 18-year-old student still living with their wealthy parents, trying to read their afflicted confessional poetry about the depths of misery they've experienced, that just rings empty to a bunch of people who've got one-ply bulk toilet paper secreted in their bags that they stole from the campus bathrooms because they can't afford their own for the hovel they are all sharing. And I don't mean to throw shade at all the writers and the narrator here. They do a great job given the circumstances, but really, because it's a typing game and not a writing student's debut novella, that's the only thing that keeps it from being trite. Their choices do allow it to have a coherence, and given the nature of typing games, this is impressive. I understand why they chose the approach they used, trite or not. When you finish it, there's a reveal, and the whole thing makes sense about what's going on. And I'm not going to spoil it here, but bear with me. Credit where it's due. I didn't guess the exact thing that happens. It didn't even occur to me to try, but I also was in no way surprised with the big reveal. It's like seeing a magic show with a suspiciously elephant-sized lumpy sheet in the middle of the stage, and through the whole show, you never say to yourself, that's an elephant under there, because it could be a number of big lumpy things. But when the magician rips the sheet off and says, ta-da, you go, well, of course it's a bloody elephant, and you're not very impressed. That's a little unfair, because I don't think it's meant to be surprising like in a magic show. They're trying to lead you there, pointing the lights at the lumps. It's just low-hanging fruit, the whole thing, in terms of the setting and the plot and what's actually going on with what the paper world and Origami Girl and the Fox represent. It just isn't very creative and interesting, and all the poetry and wistful narration and origami paper environments is just there to make it seem like it's creative, when in reality the real creativity comes in the making the typing game a fun experience. And they've knocked that out of the park. I just wish they'd gone down a different path and not made it so much about writing. With a title that sounds so much like Epistolary, it was inevitable, I suppose. Don't think I hadn't noticed that. Epistolary is when you tell a story using letters. Well, this game doesn't have you finding one envelope after the other and reading, Dear Agnes, I hope this letter finds you well. Today we picnicked at the Botanic Gardens with all of our cousins. But in a way, this game actually kind of does have you doing that. The paper book theme of the world, the poetry on the landscape, it is absolutely also a game where you are reading letters. The central mystery that makes it is who is doing the reading of the letters and who is doing the writing. To reiterate a point from earlier, I do think this game is a lot more appealing to a very different kind of audience from the enthusiast gamer. I think a lot of people's mums, grandmas, or teachers, or whoever you care to name who likes literary things, but not usually games, could enjoy this one. It could also be good for people who like typing, but not games, like a lot of people who work in offices. It's just not got any hooks for your classic button-brained, violence and action, toxic gamers. At least not the ones who aren't heaps into typing like me. And to revisit a different point, I don't necessarily believe that comedy is the only option with typing games, you could probably do all sorts of things. What about a noir murder mystery or a sci-fi opera or something like that? But it would have to be something with a natural concession towards the suspension of disbelief, or at least a flight of fancy woven in at the same diegetic level as the bloody typing part of the game is. My genre fiction examples could pull this off. If it's a murder mystery, maybe Dick Detective's on the case, but oh no, he's incompetent. Lucky his typewriting secretary Lois, supporting actress, finds clues amongst the gibberish at the crime scene. Or for the sci-fi opera, Ace Rocket Ship's newest death ray needs to have random word codes dialed into it to synchronize the energy frequencies so it goes zap, zap, zap. You might even have a shot at having the gameplay and story line up neatly if you were to do a psychological thriller about a psychic therapist assisting the police, picking through the words they see when they're reading an insane murderous criminal's mind. Whatever it is, I just don't think you can lean towards serious dramatic poetry and then draw a line between it and the typing gameplay and not expect the experience to feel a little hollow. One more thing I'll say is also this choice for it to be a serious dramatic story underneath it all is at odds with another aspect to the typing game concept, and that's replayability. Not always the biggest deal with single-player games. It is something that I think typing games should really be aiming for. That's because people go through different devices in their lives. Whether a new keyboard or a new laptop, a typing game has the potential to be something you can go to with your new peripheral and then break it in with. Have fun getting used to the dimensions, feel and layout of whatever keyboard happens to be new to you by playing a few rounds of your favourite typing game. I think Typing of the Dead, as a concept, nails this. It's a game that you could absolutely whack on the new laptop and play a bunch of rounds on until you felt like you were really dialed in to your new device. Given the crazy opulent scene for custom mechanical keyboards these days, there's even a pretty good captive niche market that would eat this up. There's probably already a game doing it, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Typing of the Dead. The problem with Epistory is once you've played it once, you've played it. You know the story. It's not like booting up the funny zombie game with the words. You've explored the areas, you've solved the puzzles, you've seen the bugs and creepy crawlies, you know the ending. When Epistory is done, it's done, and you probably aren't going to use it on your other devices to improve your typing, even though it totally improves your typing. I did read that they made a follow-up game, and I haven't played it. So if this one is just a proof of concept for a more mature game, then the developers have nailed their brief. It's perfect if looked at like that, and in no way am I surprised that it did well enough to merit a follow-up. As an entire experience just on its own, it's very basic and empty, but everything is super slick and well done. It's just not a substantial experience. It's just words flashing on a screen, held in a very simple explore and solve puzzles shell. Good music, good art direction, good writing and narration, and some honestly thrilling and fun gameplay, and to boot, it all makes sense. So what more could you ask for? Well, a lot, really. But that doesn't detract from the nice package that's here. I'd say if you can get it for a low price or for free, it's well worth your time and a must-play if you like typing games or are genuinely interested in picking up something that will improve your typing and isn't dead boring. It is quite short, so I wouldn't go buying it for full price, especially because there's a version of Typing of the Dead that is similarly priced on Steam. Well, that is unless it was a gift for that creative writing professor you know who has a new laptop that they're not quite good at typing on yet and who doesn't normally get games, then this one might just be the one. Like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.